and welcome back to the review realm. It's Sienna and today we're going to be taking a look at the film The Shining because according to this poster it is one of the top 100 films of all time, and every single Tuesday I review one of the films that is on this list, so stick to the end of the video where I will have a random number generator pick which film I'm going to be reviewing next week. But today it is the 1980 film directed by Stanley Kubrick that has a runtime of 2 hours and 23 minutes, The Shining, and it is based off of the Stephen King novel with the same title. It does star Jack Nicholson as Jack and Shelley Duvall as Wendy, and they are a couple who has a young son named Danny. And Jack is an aspiring author. He is a former teacher, but he's looking for a career where he can really focus on finishing up his novel. And he decides to take a job at the Overlook Hotel, which is in Colorado in the mountains, and he is going to be the winter caretaker. So his job is to basically turn on the furnace in the winter when no one can get up the mountain and do it, just so the pipes don't freeze, kind of just look after it in the winter when no one is there. Very simple, very easy job. However, it is very isolated because they're kind of just trapped in this hotel for the whole winter. And you see Jack, Wendy, and their son sort of deal with the hotel. Now, the Overlook Hotel is a fictional place, but it does draw inspiration from Stephen King's time at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. Now, I am from Colorado, so this film is kind of cool because you do hear just references to Colorado throughout it, which I thought was kind of fun, but it's also, I'm from Colorado, so I do know the places they are talking about. I've never been to the Stanley Hotel. I've heard of it. This film, like, in Colorado, like, you've definitely like, oh, The Shining, red rum, like, growing up, that's what I heard. Now, I have seen this film before, but I was a lot younger, so I don't think I really appreciated it as much as I do now, especially watching it for the second time. I was starting to grasp things, because when I first watched this film, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be scared, like, it's a horror movie, ooh, super scared, ooh, and then I watched it and I was really disappointed because I wasn't scared at all while watching this film. But now watching it the second time, and when I'm a lot older now, I definitely do appreciate it more. Now, I believe this is the last Stanley Kubrick film that is on this poster because I have already done a review on 2001: A Space Odyssey and also A Clockwork Orange, and this one is going to sound very familiar to those reviews if you have watched some of my other Throwback Tuesday reviews, but it's just because of Stanley Kubrick. He is a person who is focused on art and not entertainment, so to say, if that makes sense, which as a result does make it entertaining. Like, this film is very enjoyable to watch from an art perspective, if that makes sense. Like, Stanley Kubrick, I feel like he just really understands how dialogue should be used and also how brilliant filmmaking in films can be. I think he treats dialogue almost sacred. Like, characters should be saying something because it's very important for the audience to know, not just to get the audience from point A to point B. Visuals can do that as well, and Stanley Kubrick does a fantastic job at that. But I was really thinking about the dialogue, especially as this is the third Stanley Kubrick film doing for the Throwback Tuesday review, and there is a lot that you can unpack in this dialogue and how he's trying to prepare the audience for later on in the movie. Now, I do have some notes, so if you do see me looking down, that is why. Now, a few things I picked up. Now, I'm gonna have to do a lot of deep diving into this probably later. Again, the symbolism within any Stanley Kubrick film is just so much. It's so much, but it's so much fun. It's like, what does that mean? Why is he doing that? Why is Stanley Kubrick showing us this? There's a reason for everything. Like, I said it in my Clockwork Orange review. The mother's hair, you could write at least a 50-page paper just on the color of her hair because it changes throughout the film. And within The Shining specifically, Wendy and Danny's clothing changes, and it just illustrates a huge shift within their characters. And most of the time, their clothes are, like, matching. Like, they're both wearing red when they're out playing in the snow, which kind of shows their connection to one another. But there was one thing when you first meet Wendy. They are in their home. I believe it's in Boulder. She's reading The Catcher in the Rye. Now, I've never read that book. I know it's a super popular book people read in school. I just was never in those English classes that read that book. It wasn't any of the required reading, but I did do a quick Google search, and it is about the protection of innocence, and Wendy is protecting Danny, her child. That's kind of her goal as a character, so it does show a thematic connection to The Catcher in the Rye and The Shining, which that I thought was really cool. Now, there are tons of books, like you could tell she's a reader within their home, and then you also have the character Dick, who is the main chef, and you see him in his house in Florida. Now, I didn't pick this up while watching the film. When I was thinking about it later, I was like, gosh, I need to go back now and figure out what books were on both of his nightstands, because you see him on his bed, and he gets, like, The Shining, some supernatural sense, basically, and there's books on both of his nightstands, and it doesn't show, like, the paper. They could have done that, and we would have never known the book title. It actually shows the spine, so you can figure it out. I need to go back to see what books are on that, and if that has any correlation to either theme or whatever they're trying to illustrate within that. But that is just one instance of some things. Now, I do think, when thinking about this film, the most important part within this film, because it does take place over a couple months, and it's broken down, like, you have the interview, 1 month, things like that. It does stop and tell you where you are time-wise, and it is the last day before they are really doing their winter caretaking there. The hotel's kind of packing up. There's a lot of busy stuff. I think that is the most important part of this film, because it sets up everything else that you're going to be watching. It really does. And the more I think about it, like, they're giving this tour of the hotel. And, you know, the guy, he's just kind of talking about the history of the hotel. It was built on a Native American, I believe, cemetery, is what he said, and while they were building this hotel, Native Americans were throwing axes at it, which is important, because I was like, okay, like, I guess that's a cool fun fact. It kind of explains the artwork within the Overlook Hotel, how it draws inspiration from Native Americans. Okay, like, I didn't think too much about it, and then I was thinking about it late at night, as one does, shower thoughts, and I was like, oh, guess what the murder weapon is? An axe. What did the original caretaker who killed the twins and his wife use as a weapon? An axe. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's all connecting. So that is another thing I picked up. And also the switch in the clothing, as I said, in Wendy and Danny, once she wakes up Jack from his nightmare, her and Danny's clothing does switch. Now, Danny is wearing an Apollo 11 sweater. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Okay, so if you know, let me know in the comment section down below. But that's just a couple of the different symbolism and things I was picking up. And honestly, that's something I really love about a Stanley Kubrick film, is all the symbolism. It's so much fun. Like, it makes the movie fun to unpack it, and also the film doesn't have to say everything through dialogue. It's doing it through pictures. You could just take a screenshot of anywhere in this film and you could write a whole essay on it, why the colors are there, why it's important. And it just makes the film fun. At least for me, I'm a person who likes when films set up little things that then correlates to things later in the film. It makes it really enjoyable. So that's one thing that watching The Shining for the second time, I really did, like, it was fun. I was watching this and I was like, oh, that's because of that. So that was an enjoyable part for me watching this film, but maybe it's because I'm a little weird, I will admit it. But I will say, the score for this film is truly phenomenal, and the sound design, like, when Danny's riding his little bike thing, the way they add carpet in to sort of create this rhythm with the sound, because honestly, when he's riding his bike on the wood floor, it's eerie. Like, that, I think, is the scariest part of this film, him riding his bike on the wood floor. I'm like, something about that sound just freaks me out. I'm like, oh, something is going to happen. And then they mix it up with the carpet, and obviously just the score, how it just makes it kind of haunting, and the isolation, and also setting within this film. Like, you're in a huge hotel, and they really narrow it down to a couple rooms. Like, I think it's interesting how they use the ballroom to sort of bring people from the past of the hotel and how Jack interacts with them. It typically always happens, I think it does always happen within the ballroom. And why is that? And then the photo at the end is in the ballroom. Why is that? Like, just thinking about this film, like, everything's important. Also, he does have an interaction with the old caretaker of the old winter caretaker. in the bathroom. Why is that? Oh, and guess what? In the room, he meets that lady in the bathroom. The old caretaker hid his daughters and wife after he killed them in the bathroom. Little interesting. I'm just gonna say there's a lot of things you can connect the dots, and it really makes this film enjoyable. And as per any Stanley Kubrick film, the ending is up for interpretation, which again is kind of fun. But I do really like how he sets up things in the beginning of the film to help the ending of the film, especially with Danny and Wendy playing in the maze. And then you never see Jack in the maze before that, so it makes sense why he would get lost and then freeze to death. So they really do think about everything, so then the audience, it makes sense why. And like mentioning how to drive the cat like snowmobile thing to Wendy during the tour. Well, then she has to drive in. That's how she escapes. So everything is being set up towards the end of the film, which I enjoy. It helps you understand the characters' decisions, I think, a lot. But I really did enjoy the film The Shining the second time, when I could really truly understand what was going on screen and understand it as art. So I had a great time watching this film, and I definitely would recommend it if you are into psychological horror. Now, I wouldn't say it's scary or anything, but it is fun, and of course there is nudity in this film, so you have been warned about that. But now it is time to do the random number generator, and we are going to see which film I will be reviewing next week. Alright, and it is going to be Papillon, I think is how you say it, from 1973. Will be our next week's review, so stay tuned for that, and let me know your thoughts on either Papillon or The Shining down in the comment section down below, and have a great day. Bye!